Hey everybody, Icy Cat here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the next patch that's coming out for the game. Update 2.2.2 launches tomorrow, Wednesday, August 9th. And if you want to know what changes this is going to bring to the game, then stick around as I go over all the information next. The final title update for Operation Health, patch 2.2.2, will launch on all platforms Wednesday, August 9th. As always, the full written patch notes are available on the Ubisoft blog. I have the link for that in the comments below the video player. And if you frequent the forums or the subreddit, you may have already seen these before. But for those that don't get their news and information from there, here's what we can expect out of the last major update for Operation Health. First up is a list of dedicated servers coming for custom matches. Now previously, the way dedicated servers on custom games had worked before was that you needed a full team of 10 players in order to reserve that dedicated space. If you weren't able to gain a full team of 10 within 10 minutes of launching that dedicated server, you would lose your spot on that and it would go back to a peer-to-peer custom game. They're now changing it so as long as you have at least 2 players, you will be able to play custom games on a dedicated server. If you do solo launch a custom game for some reason, if you want to test something out or whatever, that will not be on a dedicated server. But as long as you have at least 2 players, your custom games will then take place on a dedicated space. If you do want to host a game on your own, again, just for testing purposes or something like that, you will then need to do that through the LAN mode. Additionally, dedicated servers will be available for Terrorist Hunt. Host migration used to be a thing in that. When the host would leave, everybody would have to reset. That's no longer going to be an issue. All Terrorist Hunt matches will now take place on dedicated servers starting in the near future. Furthermore, in-game voice chat will now be on dedicated servers with Vivox integration. This will be the integrated in-game voice chat for all platforms. This is going to make the communication overall more clear, easy to understand, and will do so while still using less bandwidth than before. A really interesting change that's coming to the game is how they're going to be handling vaulting animations while aiming. Now, previously, the way this would work is that you would vault over a shield or some surface, and as you would do so, the player animation would be locked in a forward-facing position. Now, if you were a defender, maybe you were on the side of that vaulted shield waiting for somebody to hop over it, it would look like they weren't even looking at you, and yet they would kill you, and that would oftentimes catch people by surprise, and they've frequently requested that the player's animation reflect where they're actually looking as they do their vaulting animation. Hearing that feedback, they've gone ahead and implemented that, so now we can see what this looks like. So now when a player vaults over a surface, they will now be looking in the same direction that the player is actually looking, creating more consistency between what's going on in the player versus the model. This is going to give you a lot better understanding if they're actually looking at you or not, rather than having that blanket forward-facing animation they had always had before. In addition to those changes coming to the game, we will also have the next Elite Operator skin. We got a first look at this on the Rainbow Six Twitter feed a few days back, but this is the Elite Pulse set called Lucky 7th. Just like all other Elite bundles, this will give you a new operator skin and headgear, skins for all of that operator's weapons, which can then be shared with any other operators that share the same weapons. In this case, Castle's weapons will also be available for those same skins. He'll get the wavelength gadget skin for his heartbeat sensor, a victory animation, and a unique charm. I will be trying to do a review on this entire bundle set for you in the next couple of days, so do keep an eye out for that if you're at all interested. Additionally, as Operation Health comes to a close, they're talking about the end of season rewards package that we're going to be getting, and it's a little different than previous seasons. We're getting a little bit more than that. Previously, we would get a charm that would go onto the weapon to show your status within the season, and we will be getting something like that. And we can see here that it has the Operation Health badge as part of the charm. But in addition to that, if you're a Year 2 Season Pass owner, you will also get Doc's gauze headgear and the mended weapon skin for his revolver. This is something that all players who own the Year 2 Season Pass will have. You can also unlock this if you get the Year 2 Pass at any point until the season ends. So even if you don't have it now, if you pick up the Season Pass later for Year 2, you will still get this. Again, the tie-in being for Operation Health, so these items are available for Doc specifically. There's some other things that are going to be taking place after this title update and into as well as over the course of next season. One of those things is going to be the upgraded servers. They say that the extent of these server improvements will range from things like hit registration and desynchronization to overall latency. This is where we'll also see the higher tick rate servers and things like that. Now, back at the beginning of Operation Health, we were led to believe that this was going to take place during the course of these 3 months, and it seems like now they need a little bit more time to get that fully implemented. We've seen some things like they were testing these features out last week on the technical test server, and they do sort of indicate that based on some of that feedback they got from the test server, the technical feedback, not the player feedback, that they were able to determine that they just needed a little bit more time to roll all of those changes out. So while some people might be severely disappointed that the servers aren't coming out necessarily over the course of Operation Health and it will bleed into the next season, I'm sure we can also agree that if they rushed the servers a little faster and got them in that same time frame and they weren't done right, we would all still be complaining. As long as it's done right and it gives us all of the promised changes, I think that's the most important aspect of it. But I'm sure a lot of you, like me, are a little disappointed that this couldn't have taken place during the course of the actual Operation Health as initially promised. Another change taking course over the time period mentioned before is peer-to-peer removal. They will be removing the peer-to-peer voice and party chat features from in-game in the future, which means you'll have an easier time connecting to people as well as forming parties. This is dealing specifically with the communication and the synchronization. This isn't talking about the dedicated servers that apply to the game modes, whether it's casual or ranked or custom matches. And finally, LAN mode will be coming to PlayStation 4. This is expected to actually implement in Season 3. As always, we have a series of bug fixes and changes coming to the game, and so we'll go over those briefly. I'll just go over some of the bigger ones that will more directly impact the game, and for the full complete list of those changes, again, do please go check out the full patch notes listed on the developer blog. The first is one of the big groundbreaking glitches that we've seen in this last season, and that's the fact that Valkyrie cams could be used to give an unfair advantage on the bank map. You could toss it into a spot, and then although that camera couldn't actually see anything, it would just be a blank screen, you could tag the entire enemy team indefinitely the entire round. With tomorrow's patch rolling out, you will no longer be able to use that glitch. That's a big one. Another thing that's been fixed is that in certain cases, nitro cells wouldn't deal any damage when they were thrown against certain types of metal beams. They've also taken care of the fact that sometimes wall reinforcement debris would remain floating after being destroyed. And here's a somewhat confusing one. Laser sights no longer reduce the pellet spread of shotguns. Now, I'm not sure exactly what they mean by this. The whole point of putting a laser sight on a gun is to make it so that when you hip fire, it's more accurate. The accuracy of a shotgun is determined by the pellet spread. If you are no longer having the laser influence the pellet spread, then what is the point of putting a laser on a shotgun? Unless they meant to say that there's some kind of a double stack advantage of maybe when you ADS with a laser sight, you get some kind of a double advantage and they've balanced that out and they just didn't word that clearly. Otherwise, if that's the case, there really isn't any point to putting laser sights on shotguns, and we'll have to test what that means after tomorrow's update to find out if that's the case or not, or if they simply misworded that. Now, I am the first person to acknowledge that putting a laser sight on your shotgun in real life would not do anything to the spread of pellets in a gun. It's a laser sight, not a choke tube. For that matter, aiming down the sights wouldn't do that in real life either, but it's a video game mechanic. It's the way the game has worked. It's the way other first-person shooters have treated this kind of a game mechanic too. So, reality aside, acknowledging the fact that this is a game mechanic, it is changing in some way, and we'll need a little bit more information, because if they've actually changed it so that laser sights don't do anything on shotguns, then they have in fact given shotguns a nerf. Whereas if they simply weren't clear enough on what this meant, then maybe it's not so bad. Like I said, we'll have to see. As promised, further refinements were done to Hibana's gadget. X-Kairos pellets should no longer leave floating debris when the wall blows up. Additionally, sometimes it would not affect the main section of the wall reinforcements, and that shouldn't be occurring anymore either. They fixed a few instances where Glaz's gadget wouldn't always highlight enemies when looking through specific angles on certain kinds of windows. And likewise, Echo's drone would not properly stick to the ceiling in the garage of Bank, and you should now be able to do that with no issues. On level design, there's a variety of fixes, including things like certain floors not blowing up properly or drones rubber banding through vent holes. A notable one is that on Canal, players were able to use a shield vault exploit to spawn kill attackers. That's been fixed now, so you can no longer do that. Gadgets not being able to be placed properly in the radio room on the Coast Guard side of that map has also been fixed. There's also been some fixes to the user experience side of things. Inviting a player through the Uplay client prior to launching the game will no longer have problems when adding them to the squad. A variety of headgears and charms were also showing as low-quality textures, and that has been properly updated to reflect the higher quality textures that they should have. Again, this update drops tomorrow, that's Wednesday, August 9th, on all platforms. So what do you guys think about some of these changes? Has Operation Health lived up to your expectations for repairing the state of the game? How do you feel about some of those server changes bleeding over into the next season? Share with me down below or shoot me a message over at IcyCat25 on either Facebook or Twitter. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and information for Rainbow Six Siege, then please do like and subscribe. You can also click that notification icon to make sure that you are alerted as soon as the newest piece of information drops. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.